My name's Dorinda Carter Andrews. I'm an associate professor in teacher education here at Michigan State University, and my primary area of focus is race and equity in education. Particularly, I look at the achievement patterns of African American students in urban and suburban schools, and I focused a lot on high achieving African American students, but I'm now beginning to look at the achievement patterns and identities of average achieving and underperforming Black students, because those are areas of need for continued research as well. I like to tell people I'm an engineer by training, but an educator by birth. I have a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering, and I was actually in corporate America for 2 years, working as a project manager for an engineering consulting firm. And then I taught high school math for a couple of years. I'm very good at math, and my dream was actually to always be a high school math teacher. I got a master's in elementary ed at Vanderbilt University and another master's in education at Harvard, and then my doctorate is in learning and teaching from Harvard University. So I'm very much committed to issues of K-12 education. I consider myself to be a race researcher, and I particularly look at that work around 3 strands: Black student achievement, but also urban teacher preparation. How do we consider issues of race and racism in the preparation of new teachers for urban contexts? And then thirdly, I do a lot of work and research with in-service teachers. So we focus on the pre-service, but once teachers get out into the classroom, there aren't a lot of opportunities to talk about race and bias in teaching and learning. For me, the work is personal and professional, so I'm interested in issues of race and student identity in schools because I was a student of color. In my own schooling, I went to predominantly white schools, but I was a high achiever, and I knew that experience of often being the only Black student in the classroom and raising my hand and being overlooked, or students not giving me that visible eye contact in a small group situation, or being the native informant. If we're talking about any issue related to Black students, I'm supposed to know and be the spokesperson for my race. I understand those issues personally, which made me passionate about them professionally. And I think it's important for teachers and administrators to understand that we're not post-racial. You know, we're in a time where we're 60 years past Brown. We're almost at the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act, and yet and still, some of these factors for African American students still remain, where you're expected to be the native informant for your race in the classroom, where students overlook you, you have feelings of invisibility by your peers and by teachers, where there are lowered expectations for you, or grade inflation as a result of the lowered expectations. And so some of this is conscious, but a lot of it is unconscious. People with good intentions and poor outcomes. And I think we have to keep issues of race and racial inequity in learning on the table, because it's there when we disaggregate achievement data, it's there when we look at discipline referrals, it's there when we look at overrepresentation in special education. So we can't hide from it. We can't sweep race under the rug. And the best thing we can do to achieve equity for all of our students is to continue having candid conversations about race and racism in education. All of our problems are not about race solely. Certainly, we know issues of poverty interrelated with race are an issue. We know that gender is an issue, with males in general performing under girls, and then males of color being at the lowest end of the achievement gaps. But if we don't keep race as a focus, we will miss something in terms of achieving educational equity and closing what we call achievement gaps. Some specific takeaways, I think, for schools and for districts are to keep issues of cultural competency on the table. How might you have administrators work that explicitly into their strategic planning, their school improvement plans, right? What are the goals specific to building cultural competency in your building, and where are those visible in the school improvement plan? How are we making time for professional development that's solely dedicated to raising cultural competency for staff? Another layer of that, though, because we know that most of the discrimination that students experience actually comes from their peers, how do we, through our curriculum, both academic and extracurricular, continue to educate our young people on how to be more culturally sensitive and competent, because they're going into a global society? To give an example of a way in which my work around cultural competency has specifically helped school districts, a particular school district that I've worked with here in the Michigan area over the last 5 years has done a couple of things. One in particular, they've joined a professional network, a consortium of other similar demographic schools who are also grappling with achievement gap issues. And so they've said, you know, we need to be a part of a larger community so that we can get strategies from that community as well, because those eventually filter down into instruction. I'm really passionate about student voice, and so this school district has said, you know, we need to have an equity student council. So they've gleaned a cohort of high school students that are multiracial to say we value student voice as we talk about issues around the achievement gap. We need for you all to work with us on how to close gaps in our district. What do you have to say? What ideas do you have to help us diversify curriculum and strengthen student-teacher relationships? Those are two specific things, two moves that say we care about students and what they have to say about achievement inequities. And we recognize that we need help from a larger network of like-minded people. For me, these things are critical as we educate a more ethnically diverse student population. Schools have to be places where they can maintain a positive racial identity, but also feel like they can achieve at high levels. That has got to stay a focus for us as educators.